good morning, class 7. We will continue with the chapter of history, Devotional Path to the Divine, chapter 8. Yesterday we have talked about that there was the idea of Supreme God, that is, the Supreme Power, whom we call as God. Then we had different sects which were coming up in South India, Nayanars and Alvars. One group who was worshipping Shiva, they were known as Nayanars. From the name you can make out Nayan, that is I. And the other group was the Alvars, whom were famous for worshipping Lord Vishnu, right? So we have talked about Basavan's Veerashaivism. We have to continue from the saints of Maharashtra. From the 13th to the 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Dhaneshwar, that is Gyaneshwar, popularly known as, and then we had Namdev, Eknath and Tukaram, as well as women like Sakhubai and the family of Chokhamela, who belonged to the untouchable Mahar caste. This regional tradition of bhakti focused on the Vitthal, a form of Vishnu. It is believed that Vitthal was also incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Right? So, the regional tradition of bhakti focused on Vitthal, a form of Vishnu temple in Pandharpur, as well as on the notion of personal God residing in the hearts of all people. These saint poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of piety, and social differences based on birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families, earning their livelihoods like any other person, while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. So these saints, they have not secluded, or they have not left the world. They had rejected the idea of renunciation, that is leaving the world. They preferred to live with their families. They earned their livelihood to first support their families, and at times they served the fellow human beings. A new humanist ideas emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta said, they are Vaishnavas who understand the pains of others. Questioning the social order. This is an Abhanga, Marathi devotional hymn of Sant Tukaram. He who identifies with the battered and the beaten, mark him as a saint, for God is with him. He holds every forsaken man close to his heart. He treats a slave as his own son. Says Tuka, I won't be tired to repeat again, such a man is God in person. Here is an abhang composed by Choklamela's son. You made us low caste. Why don't you face that fact, great Lord? Our whole life, leftover food to eat. You should be ashamed of this. You have eaten in our home. How can you deny it? Chokha's son, Karmamela asked, why did you give me life? Discuss the idea. So you can see that just because the person, the family of Chokhamela was from a Mahar family which was considered as untouchable, how disgraceful life he was facing. And that's what he has written in his Abhang. Okay. Nathpanthis, Siddh and Yogis. A number of religious groups that emerged during this period criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and social order, using simple, logical arguments. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharis, and Yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless, ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasana, breathing exercises, and meditation. These groups became particularly popular among low caste. Their criticism of conventional religion created the ground for devotional religion to become a popular force in northern India. So, there were groups which were coming up and which were against the inequality which existed in the society. They were Nathpanthis, Siddhacharis, and Yogis. They were in favor that world should be renounced, that the people should leave the worldly life, go to the jungles, meditate on the and believe that there is formless ultimate reality. Then only they will be like once they unite with the God, that is the realization with the oneness. And then they talked about the yogasana, the breathing exercises, right? Then comes Islam and Sufism. The sons had much in common with the Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. Like we had Hindu saints, same ways we have Muslim saints, they were known as Sufis. They rejected outwardly outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. So there were a lot of similarities between the Sufis and the saints, and many like they got inspired from each other. They adopted certain policies and certain methods from each other. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. In the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, that is, Shariat, and theology of Islam. While the religion of Islam gradually became more complex, Sufis provided it with additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. So Islam, the main focus was that they believed in monotheism, that is, there is only one God. Then in the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars, they developed different aspects of holy law of Shariat. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved with a disregard for the world. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables developed around them. Among the great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, and Sadi. Like the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis, the Sufis believed that the heart can be trained to look at the world in different way. They developed elaborate methods of training using zikr, that is, chanting of name of sacred formula, contemplation, sama, that is singing, raqs, dancing, discussion of parables, breathe control, etc. So, like breathe could be controlled. That then sama, singing, that was singing, rags were dancing, zikr was chanting the name of God quite often, right? So therefore, these things under the guidance of a master or peer. Thus emerged the silsila, or spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, that is tariqa of instruction and ritual practice. So these ideas were given by the peer, or it could be learned by people from peer, that was the master. In Kashmir, the Rishi order of Sufism flourished in the 15th and 16th century. This order was established by Sheikh Nuruddin Wali, also known as Nand Rishi, had a deep impact on the life of people in Kashmir. A number of shrines dedicated to Rishi saints can be found in many parts of Kashmir. So he propagated and he was very popular in different parts of Kashmir. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onwards. The process was strengthened with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate, when several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent. The Chishti Silsila, also among the most influential order, it had a long line of teachers like Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Banda Nawaz Gesudaraz of Gulbarga. They are the famous Sufi saints. A page from manuscript of Quran, Deccan, late 15th century. You can see it. Then hospice, that is house of rest for travelers, especially one kept by a religious order. So it was a place for people who are traveling, and it was taken care by the religious order. The Sufi masters held their assemblies in their khanqahs or hospices. Devotees of all descriptions, including members of the royalty and nobility and ordinary people, flocked to these khanqahs. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessings of the saints in solving their worldly problems, or simply attended the music and dance session. Often people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous power that could relieve others of their illness and troubles. The tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of that faith thronged, that means visited. So, people visited to these Sufi saints for certain cures and for certain problems to be resolved, and their tomb was still considered to be a religious place, and people of even of different religion, they visit such places. If you go to Ajmer, you will see that both Hindus and Muslims are visiting the tomb to get the blessings. So that is all for today, class. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home. Thank you.